Hi. Headlines say that there are 5 ways that Stephen Hawking predicts, terrifying ways, that we are going to all die. This was in Yahoo News on November 10, in the UK version of it. And question is, what about Stephen Hawking? This sounds a little bit morbid, characteristic really of dying atheists or paranoid thinking. Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Ruling, a physician who, while taking internal medicine, spent time on a psych ward doing psychiatric exams. And I know a little bit about mental illness. Schizophrenia, the word schizo means split, and phrenia, the phrenial part of the brain, refers to a split brain, where the left side doesn't communicate so well with the right side. And these people with schizophrenia have difficulty thinking abstractly. So that a mental exam might ask a question like, what does it mean that you shouldn't cry over spilt milk, or that birds of a feather flock together? A person with schizophrenia would say, well, those birds just like to fly together. They don't understand or think abstractly to mean that people enjoy the company of others that are like them. So in a sense, we're thinking that just because people don't see God doesn't mean He doesn't exist. There can be evidence that we're not looking at. And the absence of evidence doesn't mean it's not there. We'll look at that a little more later. But just wanted to note this for our friend Stephen Hawking, who attended Cambridge University. I'm sorry that he didn't attend 300 years earlier. He might have gotten to know Sir Isaac Newton, arguably one of the greatest minds of all times, if not the greatest. Invented calculus and many other aspects. You can Google it online and search Wikipedia. He even translated significant parts of the Bible. Deep faith in the Bible, with such a great mind, understanding it. I wonder how many people today that really don't believe have even looked at the Bible very deeply, because those who do seem to find or arrive at a conviction that this is not like any other book. It even foretells the future in the book of Daniel quite clearly with the kingdoms of this world. So anyway, just want to get past that. Sad that when atheists die, they face real anguish over maybe their lives or what they've said or stood for. This you can Google that also, dying words of atheists or infidels. And just take a look. It's awesome with maybe a dozen atheists, well-known names, that faced anguish in dying. And this was noted by myself when I visited and toured Switzerland. The tour guide pointed out to us the house of Voltaire. Voltaire was an atheist who predicted that in a few years the Bible would be a forgotten book. But interesting, the International Bible Society has its headquarters in Voltaire's old house. So who is forgotten? I hope Voltaire is forgotten before the Bible. Let's look at for a moment what Solomon said, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. The fact is, what that means is that we should not surrender ourselves to eating, drinking, sexing, doing whatever we want, but keep our heart with diligence, because we may have to face the consequences of those actions sometime, as atheists do, perhaps in dying. And Dr. Bill Bright, who toured campuses, scores of them, and talked to professors who thought they were too brilliant or understanding, knowledgeable to believe in a book of fables like the Bible, when they were really asked about the Bible, did not understand some of the basics and had to admit that they were not prepared to accept the moral consequences that faith in the Scriptures would represent. So this might also be true for Jewish leaders. You know, we think their story is that Christ was a false Messiah and that his disciples stole his body from the grave, but the fact scores of them did not see Christ after the resurrection does not offset the evidence of 2 or 3 who did. Deuteronomy 19 says, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses a matter is established. And here are not just 2 or 3 disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but all of them ran the night that Christ was captured, afraid for their lives, but were later willing to die. Would you be willing to die for a lie? Well, that you had seen Christ? I think not. So bottom line is that atheism might not be taking into account all of the right information. And another sad fact is what I believe is Catholicism has its end stage in atheism, where I have talked with people who didn't believe in God, but they began as Catholic. And thinking about it, would you really want to believe in a God who's going to burn you forever if you don't get it right? And some of that includes when you have the communion, you have to believe when that priest pronounces the blessing in Latin that it changes that wafer into the literal body of Christ. Well, if it doesn't taste like it, it might be hard to believe that. And if you wanted to Google an interesting little poem, A Roman Miracle, it's a poem about a Protestant gal who married a Catholic. Humorous, interesting, but a real truth besides. The issues in the Catholic Church with many of its fables come from even the first page of the Bible, when God said, "Let us make man in our image." Jewish people too have a problem understanding that statement, that we are made in God's image, because the word for God is Elohim. It's a plural word, and its base, Elohim, has Eloah as a feminine root. So when who was God talking to? He was talking to somebody, and to make us in their image, male and female, suggests maybe more than we're prepared to understand from a Catholic Trinity, which they claim is the basis of all their doctrine. So it's a time for re-looking, re-examination. What do we really stand and believe on? Or do we really believe in the Bible? The fact is that the Bible has withstood many hammers that have beaten against it through the centuries, and it's like the wise man that built his house on the rock, Christ said. It's the rock of his word. But if we don't see it that way, don't study it, we may be flapping in the breeze, and the house may come down in the storm. So anyway, thank you for considering this. I have a couple websites that you might find of interest. richardruling.com, that's a website on health. And if you have health issues, you might like to visit that. By the way, Ruling is spelled R-U-H-L-I-N-G, and richardruling.com. And I have another website too, newsforliving.wordpress.com. And so if you, there's some on health, some on current events, geopolitical situations. Take a look at it. Thank you for giving it a look. May God bless you, and see you next time.